Sponsored by Bangjak, Sustainable Business Development in Harmony with the Environment and Society. One of the key issues that ASEAN has been dealing with for the past several decades before is about to address the development gap, the division within and across member states. And of course, this division is clearly manifested by the GDP, the disparity in per capita income, and in other dimensions as well, such as the life expectancy, literacy rate, and poverty incidence. This is actually conceptualized as ASEAN integration, challenges and opportunities for development in Southeast Asia for the USAID Thammasat Forum held exclusively just recently under the guidance of the U.S. Embassy. One of the panelists, Dr. Suchart Katima, showcases his experience as a director for Mekong Institute, Kaen University, emphasizing on every angle to prove how the ASEAN integration will hit the streets.
Dr. Suchart, in the USAID Thammasat Forum, what will be the key, the highlights that we'll be speaking about?
Okay, well, based on the concept paper that they sent to us, they will talk about ASEAN economic integration and will analyze if the poor will benefit from this integration.
Right, so what will be your part to speak?
I'll be one of the panel to discuss especially how this economic integration and the connectivity between the 10 member countries will bring a benefit to especially the rural people who live in the remote areas.
Right. So now it's less than 3 years for the ASEAN integration. What is still lacking in terms of the bottom-up development?
Well, I think ASEAN integration have started for quite some time, especially for the 6 ASEAN members. We have to start reduce the tariff. We start implementing after ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. We start to reduce non-tariff barrier and increase a lot of connectivity, especially via transportation and road communication. So a lot of things have begun. However, I think there's still the new ASEAN member countries, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, they still have to do a lot of catch up. And I think this is where the focus will be in this forum.
What kind of catch-ups?
Well, I think number one is the development disparities between old ASEAN and new ASEAN member. I mean, if you look at in Mekong countries, like Thailand, the per capita income is about $5,200. When you look at Cambodia, it's less than 1,000. So there's a lot of 5 times to catch up.
As we all know, that the development gap among ASEAN nations is still huge, as the region ranged from impoverished Myanmar to city-state like in Singapore, a very advanced and developed nation, to emerging powerhouse like Indonesia. So that's why almost all of the ASEAN member countries still implementing a pro-poor growth policy or well-known populist policy. But how much this has been a success?
So how much of success it has been for the pro-poor growth development in ASEAN? Can you give a specific example? What has been implemented already for the pro-poor growth development?
I think there's a lot have been done. For example, like you believe it or not, like in Thailand, 80% of our agriculture value chains are actually done in we call public and private partnership. Right. And a lot of farmers in Thailand work on the contract with private sector and work win-win. For example, even now our Thai farmers have some sort of contract farming with our Prime Minister who buy all the rice at the guaranteed price. So I think this is a very clear pro-poor. Though country might lose a lot of money, but people get the benefit. And I think more and more in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Thailand, a lot of pro-poor have been implemented. people have been empowered. You can see that if the price go down, people block the road and say, hey, think about us. So I think there's a lot of demand from people at the grassroots level now.
Right. But the populist policy to empower people, that doesn't work very much, does it?
I mean, you have to look into, if you are government, you have to look into which pocket you want to take out and which pocket you want to put in. Rice export only contribute 3% of our export volume. So, but that make 40–50% of farmer happy. I just like our finance minister just said, he said, why should we #1 exporter of rice when poor farmer did not get benefit? We don't have to be the #1, but if the benefit go through different people. I agree with that. I think we have to look into our domestic happiness rather than try to be #1 all the time.
Let's talk about New Myanmar. With its epic economic and political reforms, there have been changes, of course, not just within Myanmar, but outside also. Also, much development on the land concessions have been given as to expand the economic zones across the country. But this reform actually has taken place. Let's hear more on this.
So, but there have been many political and economic changes in the past few years, including the unexpected reforms in Burma. Do any of these reforms, I mean, based on the sustainable development growth at all, that would really benefit the under-average community?
I would say at the top level, I think every government have good intention for the people. I trust that, and I believe that. But however, sometimes when you implement development, sometimes you forgot that it might be not sustainable. For example, economic land concession that happened in Myanmar, in Laos, in Cambodia. Of course, the government really have good intention to convert the public property into capital. But by doing that, they displace thousands of families. They take away a lot of agricultural land from those small landholders. So from what the policy is good, but when it goes down to the ground, they still have some problem. Yes.
But okay, saying land development, Ajahn, would you agree that the land economic concession, for example, the opening up of the new economic zone, with which the government acquires land illegally or legally, we don't know, from the local community. What do you think of this?
We cannot say it's illegally because this country comes from centrally planned economy, whereas the socialist economy where all the land belong to public. So legally, government can still go and get those land. But I think ethically, or I would say some people have been living on this land in 3 generations, 4 generations without proper document. And suddenly you decided to cut the road through them, or you decided to give the land concession to other foreign company. And that's the biggest problem, I think, in Cambodia as well as in Laos. You know. In Cambodia, there are 24 provinces. 16 provinces are engaged in economic land concession. And now the government said, well, they want to take some land back because of the environmental impact, a lot about the smallholder farmer impact. They couldn't take it back anymore because they already signed agreement for 60 years, 90 years. So I think that needs to be correct.
CLMV countries should cooperate within each other and learn from the experiences of the more successful ASEAN nations and, of course, other developed countries, especially in formulating their respective integration strategies.
So that's it. Speaking of the CLMV nations, we're under the framework of the Greater Mekong Subregion Cooperation. What are some of the progressive developments that these countries have already been made?
I think the most tangible growth that we can see among CLMV country as well as Thailand and part of China as part of the Greater Mekong subregion since the start in 1992. Now you can see there's a lot of connectivity between these countries. The implementation of cross-border transport agreement, which Thai Parliament just passed last week. This will stimulate the growth using what we call economic corridors approach, bringing people from the landlocked country to become land-linked between different ports. So that will be the biggest progress. Now, for example, Lao people do not have to wait for the seafood come from Thailand. They can enjoy seafood from Da Nang. People from Mae Sot, from Thailand, we no longer need to have the seafood from the south of Thailand. We can enjoy seafood from Malameng port, from Myanmar. So there's a lot of movement, a lot of connectivity that bring people together, give people more choice what to consume and what to work on.
But lots of infrastructure development must be, implemented.
Yes, I think
like roads, construct railways.
Yes, a lot of construction still need to be done. We talk about billion US dollar to connect everybody together. The big thing is the big ASEAN member country are looking at major road, major railway connection. But we forgot to realize that unless there's a feeder road, there are small service road that connected to the major economic corridor. People in CLMV country, especially the rural poor, still cannot benefit because they cannot get their community into the major corridors. So more infrastructure fund need to go to the feeder road especially in the mountainous areas.
Food price volatility, challenges of the old ASEAN members, the aspects on disconnectivity, and of course the possibility of ASEAN being less dependent on foreign aid coming after the break.